Oh, welcome back, everybody, to another incredible episode of Cocktails with Cav, where we bring the indie creator meet and greets to you. And look, as always, please give us a follow, share the stream so more people can get to know these incredible creators. We just have a lot of fun. I made it through Thanksgiving. We didn't have any huge political blow-ups at the family gathering. It was incredible. Hope your family and friends enjoyed your Thanksgiving too. Oh, and look, tonight's show brought to us by our friends at Run Amok Books. They're an incredible indie publishing outfit. Their links will be in the description for you, but look, they're not afraid to take chances. They're looking for new, incredibly interesting voices, and heck, they're even down for a little controversy. What the heck? Give them a look. Run Amok Books. Links will be in the description for you. Well, tonight's show, we have an incredible paranormal thriller author for you. You're going to love it. Oh, please help me welcome to the stage, Kimberly Brouillette. Oh, Kimberly, I am so glad you could finally make it here on Cocktails with Cav. I know we had some scheduling issues going back and forth there for a little bit.
Thank you for having me, George. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Wait, where are you coming to us? I know you're on the East Coast tonight. Where are you coming to us from?
Yeah, I'm in Concord, North Carolina. I'm near Charlotte.
Well, at least everything seems to have calmed down a little bit in North Carolina as of late, or?
Yeah, fortunately we're in the Piedmont, so we didn't get hit as hard from Helene, but I do have family in Western North Carolina, and my heart goes out to them. They are still suffering. They still don't have a lot of roads open. There's a lot that needs to be done, and they've been largely forgotten by the media at this point, except for locally. And so that people need to remember that they are still suffering significantly, and a lot of
absolutely.
And so there's a lot of people that are still without clean water in Asheville and that area.
Wow, yeah. It's like, I'll tell you what, being, here in New Orleans, obviously no stranger to hurricanes, but yeah, definitely thoughts and prayers out to the fine folks in Western North Carolina and that whole swath from the Gulf Coast to Western North Carolina. Something's going on. Get the hurricane all the way up there. But
that was they weren't prepared for that at all.
I don't think anybody was. That was a strange occurrence,
Mm-hmm.
Must be cloud seeding. But
who knows? Who knows anymore?
Oh, absolutely, right? Well, geez, I tell you what, Kimberly, we love to have the audience. One of the main reasons for the Cocktails with Cav show, love to introduce indie creators to the audience. And, I think that relationship's just so important, especially as hard as us indie creators work, right?
Oh, yes. No kidding. I mean, I know I worked like 5 years on putting my books together, and it, you put a lot of effort, and people don't realize how long it takes sometimes to come up with not only the story, but to get it to print and everything else. There's a lot of process involved.
Oh, absolutely. And especially when you're on your own as an indie creator, right? So Well, how'd you get, let the audience get to know you a little bit, Kimberly? How'd you get into these incredible supernatural books you have going on? I tell you what, they're incredible, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. So, by all means.
But I had been in publishing for a long time. I was worked at a magazine for nearly 20 years, and also we had a publishing side. So I was used to doing the editing aspect of both the magazines and writing in the magazine, and then also doing editing for books. And so I finally, got an opportunity to do, you saw my thing about one of the books that I was a contributing editor for, and I got a little taste for the actual writing on the story side. And I decided, well, I think I could, maybe play my hand at this, at some point. And lo and behold, I moved into a haunted apartment.
Ah,
just... And sure, in New Orleans, you're not any stranger to ghosts in that area. I know that they have a lot of stories about everything that goes on down there. I've been down in New Orleans a couple times, but we actually lived in a haunted apartment for nearly 3 years.
Wow. So, did you get out? I ask every supernatural author, did you get out?
At first, it wasn't so bad. It was kind of weird stuff. So what happened initially was my daughter, unfortunately, who is no longer with us. She passed away a few years ago, but that's another story. We'll have to maybe share that another time. I'm going to be writing a book about that. We can talk about that later. But she actually was about 10 years old at the time, and she kept on telling me, she said, Mom, she said, my stuffed animals keep moving around my room. I'm like,
no.
Year old, what do you say? What are you talking about? And so she's, I asked her, and she said, no, she said, I'm serious, Mom, I'm serious. She said, I'll go to school and I'll have, made my bed, I put all my shoes everywhere and everything. And then I come home from school and they won't be where I put them. I said, well, didn't they just fall off the bed? Or, maybe you just didn't remember, where you put them or something. She said, no, I'm serious. She says, I always put them in the same spot and it'll be like on the chair instead of on the bed. And so I was like, okay. So she was so serious about it. I said, well, let's try something. Let's just try something. And I said, we're going to go shopping. So did they have a certain stuffed animal they like? And she said, oh yes, this little stuffed animal. And it's like a bear with a bunny rabbit costume on it with skeleton. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But anyway, so I said, okay, well, what we're going to do, we're going to put it in the middle of the floor. And we'll just, see if, anything happens while we're gone. So went ahead and nobody was going to be there. And so we went ahead and put it in the middle of the floor. And I said to whoever might be there, I said, if you want to play with this stuffed animal, you are welcome to play with it. And then we'll know you're here. But we're going to be gone a few hours. So, I'm going to close this door. Nobody's going to interrupt you. Go ahead, have fun. So we left and we went shopping, did our, grocery shopping, whatever we were doing that day. And we came back a couple hours later and it literally had rotated 180 degrees.
Oh, no. You see?
Yes. And it happened while we were gone. So it became a game for about 6 weeks. And we started seeing it move not only in the same spot, but literally 2 different rooms.
Oh, geez.
So we would leave it in one place in the bedroom, and we come back and it'd be in the living room. It might be in front of the stereo. It might be on the coffee table, wherever it was. But it was about 6 weeks it did that. And we were like, okay, so obviously we have something going on here. I mean, it's not mistakable. This is
at least it was fairly innocuous though, right? I mean, it was
non-threatening, just kind of, okay, this is strange, what is going on here? So initially it was like that, and then I started getting into paranormal groups on Facebook because I was like, I wanted to find out, is this something I need to be concerned about, or is this something that I think that we'll be okay as long as we don't see anything negative, feel anything threatening. And so we started getting on those groups and started learning more about it. And it felt like, at least, like you said, it was innocuous, that there wasn't anything that seemed threatening. And, but it got me into the groups. Well, then a friend of mine, Karen Van Hammond, actually asked me to work on a project with her. And so I was like, because she had heard that I was in publishing and things like that. And I was like, so I looked at what she'd written a few chapters of an initial concept. And I was like, well, I said, let's revisit this. I like the general premise of this, but I said, let's, what do you think about changing this up? I said, instead of what she had, which didn't really make any sense as far as the storyline and what was realistic. I said, why don't we make this a real murder mystery? And, it was set in this little town in Maine. And then we can, we can, have it a real murder mystery, but not tell anybody who the killer is. And actually have it from the perspective of the killer too, but you don't know who it is. Okay, right. So you have to guess who the killer is. We don't tell you who the killer is. Okay, and so we have all this story going on, and you have these murders take place in this small town. So what happened was that as I was living in this apartment and I began working on this story, then we started having more and more happening. And so the things that happened in my real life began to become inspiration for some of the scenes in the story. So we worked together on the first book. And there was several. It actually got a little bit scarier as we moved along. But initially, we had like shadow figures, and we had we ended up. We think we had about 4 spirits in there. And the first one that did the stuffed animal, moving the stuffed animal.
Right.
My daughter actually said she saw her at one point. She said she was probably a little girl with strawberry blonde hair and curly blonde hair. She's probably about 7 years old. And so, and she said, well, I think her name is like Spring or April or May or something like that. And I said, okay. So I was, had some of my friends on with the community, in the paranormal community. And I was like, okay, so why don't I ask them about it? What do they think? And one of them, I know that there's a lot of question as to how sensitive people are, and if it's real or not. And I had not told this woman anything. And she said, she was sensitive. And she says, well, I think her name is April. I had not told her anything. She says, I think she's about 7 years old, that she lived in that area at one point a long time ago. This was not recent. And that her name was April. And I was like, I didn't tell her anything. There was no way for her to know. She lives in California. There was no way for her to know that. And I was like, well, that's a little close, close to home. That was pretty.
Were you ever able to investigate and, maybe some of the history?
Yeah, I did. And it had been farmland. So I don't know where the house was specifically. It might have been right there. It was close enough to where probably the main road would have been, where it might have been, but far enough away, where it wouldn't have been if it was a farmland, farmhouse. It wouldn't have been right there on the main road, but close enough to access it,
Right.
So that was a possibility, and never got a real answer on that. Did get possible answers on some of the other ones. So there was another spirit. So a lot of times I would be actually working on my books. I would work. I'm typically a night owl, and so I would be working on my books at night, and sometimes like 10 to 1 o'clock in the morning I would be working. And so there was a lot of times where in the apartment, where I would be working would be in the living room. And there would be a shadow figure, and it would be poking its head out, of the bathroom. And it was about, right at the door handle height, So, and both me and Chris would see it, my husband would see it. And then we started saying, okay, I don't know if you've heard of, people call them words. I hate to use the word orb because it's got a negative connotation, but anomalies, if you will. And these were black. They were not light. They were black anomalies about the size of a, big gumball, And Wow. It would float out. And both Chris and I saw it during the day as well. Okay, so it wasn't like a shadow. It wasn't anything like that. It would float out of the bathroom. That was the main bathroom, and then it would float up through the ceiling in the living
Well,
room.
at least your
Most people-
husband saw it too and didn't just think you were crazy, right?
Crazy.
That helps.
Too. All three of us were seeing the animal stuff, the animal happening, and then we saw the thing with regard to the, with regard to the ball, the orb, the dark orb, and everything, and so that happened numerous times where we saw that. But we also actually there was times when we were in the bedroom, and at night at like 2 a.m, we'd be laying there in bed, and we'd hear little footsteps running right in front of our door and down.
No, that's it's time to go.
So it was one of these things where we regularly had these things. It wasn't just like once in a blue moon. It was like almost daily. It's waves. I noticed that it might have been a lunar thing. I don't know. It came in waves where we had times where it seemed to be more concentrated, a little bit more, I guess, significant instances, versus other times where it might be, a little more sporadic or not quite as often or not as intense. We did see light anomalies, like, larger orbs, if you want to call them that, in the living room. We saw that. We had all sorts of stuff. Later, when we were closer to the end of our lease for the second time, and so we started hearing some actual noises in our closet, and this is where it got worse. Okay, so this was moving from our bedroom literally in the middle of the night, and so we would be in bed and we'd be listening, and we started hearing this and it was something moving the coat hangers back and forth.
Oh, geez, Pete. So you see,
back and forth. And it would knock the boxes, like the shoe boxes, off the shelf. So, and this was like at 2 and 3 in the morning. And then sometimes we'd actually hear footsteps. You know how you can hear footsteps on carpet?
Sure.
You'd hear the footsteps across the carpet to the master bedroom. And I was like, I would hold him. I was like, okay, you do hear that, right?
Yeah, that's when it's time to go. That's when it's time to not renew the lease, right?
Okay, so it's a little worse.
Oh no!
This was right before we were getting ready to. We had already decided not to renew our lease, but this was really like August, and I think our lease was up in September, so we were closing in on it. And so right towards the end of July, early August, I was actually working on story ideas, and Chris was we were both on the bed in the bedroom. It was a sunny afternoon. I remember that very clearly. There was no storms, nothing like that, right? And so he was sitting there listening to some of my ideas and bouncing things back at me. And I had my back towards the foot of the bed, right? And he was sitting where he would normally sleep with, just sitting up, right? Well, right as we were talking, heard this guttural growl over my shoulder. And it was so...
Oh. This is why I drink. This is why I drink.
But it was so close that I felt the vibrations on my neck. Okay, it was back my right shoulder, and it was so close I could feel it. I mean, it scared. I mean, it was like the scariest thing I've ever had happen up until that point, right? And so Chris, though, I looked at him and I was like, I just stopped, and I was like, I was about to say, you did hear that, right? And just as I could tell by the look in his face, he could hear it. But then as I was about to say something, it happened again. and it was another one just in the same spot. And then I ran over, and I jumped over, and I held him. I said, "Hold me."
Yeah. Well, that's certain that's the kind of things right there that either make you totally just run or give you great inspiration for paranormal novels, right? So,
Right, exactly. So I can at least utilize these. I was already in the process of writing, but at least this way I can utilize something for the benefit of the book, and get something out of all these experiences. And then it was about a week or two later, and people may or may not believe me or not. I promise you, I wouldn't want to make this up. Believe me.
right.
And I'm a writer, and I wouldn't make it up. But so we were getting ready. We were actually getting settled for bed. And I called him Mr. Mean, by the way. That's what I started calling him, because he was always when you're dealing with spirits and ghosts and things like that, especially somebody that's familiar with being in a haunted apartment or a home or whatever, you get a sense of what that spirit is like. Okay, you get a sense of whether or not it is a negative entity, or if it's something that's just, like you said, obnoxious. That there's nothing that they're going to do to hurt you. There are ones that I believe are just there and they don't even realize that they're ghosts. They might just be playing what they normally did in daily life.
Right. Right.
That sort of thing. But these were intelligent. Okay, these were intelligent haunts. They were not something that were just somebody that was repeating something they did on a daily basis. And I felt like showed that they had some sort of intelligence to them in what they were doing. So, especially since he was like right on my shoulder, whatever that was, it was right on my shoulder. And so about a couple weeks later, we were getting ready for bed, and we still had the thing going. This was all during the time when the stuff was going on in the closet. This happened almost every night. Was not getting much sleep, believe me.
Shoot, I guess not.
It was one of those nights where you can't get comfortable. Your temperature, you can't get situated. Too hot, too cold. So I had my foot dangling off the side of the bed where the cover is. Okay.
I don't like where this is going.
No, I didn't. Believe me. So what happened was that all of a sudden I felt something grab my leg, and it was just my right calf. I mean, not my other one, my right calf, because I would sleep on the right side of the bed, and I was facing out. So I had my right calf out, and I felt it. And all of a sudden, I felt something jerk. And just as I felt something jerk, I said, "Chris!" And my head basically, he said he looked over and could see enough with me with the light through the window. And he said he just saw my head just like disappear under the covers. And then he saw that my leg was sticking straight out. And it was sticking straight out from the bed. My other leg was dangling. I was basically halfway off the bed.
Oh, jeez.
I know people may not believe me. I swear I do not make this story up.
You see, that's the kind of stuff there'll get you.
He basically put his hands under my arms, right, under my armpits, and started pulling me. So he literally felt something pulling me on my leg. My one leg is dangling. I'm halfway off the bed, so my leg is straight out, being held on my calf, and he literally felt it basically tugging against him.
Jeez.
And I was up. I was basically like a tug-of-war rope. I was above the bed. So wow. It was a very, very scary experience. So naturally, later, now he did cry out for God or whoever, to, angels, whatever, to, protect us, and it went away. So, but I wasn't going to waste that experience, and I did actually put a chapter in the third book that was inspired by that experience. So,
Well, that's phenomenal. And Kimberly, I find, some of the greatest paranormal writers I know, it's because they're knee deep in it, so they have the experience.
Right.
Well, golly, I tell you what,
what it is,
you spooked me so much. I got to refill my cocktail now. I'm getting it. And look, when we get back, come on, let's talk about your 3 great books. Secrets in the Shallows, Devils in the Details, and Method in the Madness when we get back. And you're going to have to fill us in on these evil stories.
To read you that chapter. I'll read you part of that chapter.
Okay, everybody, got to pay those bills. Quick mid-roll break real fast. Look, as an Amazon affiliate, I only advertise products I truly believe in, and I wanted to give everyone a heads up on this incredible product that I use myself, especially when traveling. You cannot go wrong with the Kimberly Mini Desktop PC. With 16 gigs DDR4 RAM, as well as a 512 gig hard drive, it's as powerful as the big, huge desktop I have at home in my office. And when I'm traveling, look, you can see it fits in the palm of your hand. It's so easy to travel with. With its multiple HDMI ports, I just simply plug it into the TV in my RV or hotel room, and I have as much computing power as I need to even produce my Cocktails with Cav show on the road. So if you're in the market for a PC, please check out our affiliate link in the description. It is so incredibly inexpensive, you're not going to believe it. So do yourself a favor, go click that affiliate link and check it out. You'll be glad you did. Oh, Kimberly, so glad you can hang out with me while I refilled. I'll tell you, you creeped me out with your stories, and I was parched. But yeah, like you said,
I told you I had some good story.
Oh, absolutely. And so, like I said right before the break, God, let's talk about this incredible trilogy you have going. And I know, you can give us a little backstory on how they developed, because I know basically you were in partnership with Karen Hammond on a couple of them. And so, yeah, by all means.
Yeah, on the first book, she actually co-wrote it with me, and we went back and forth on the story and everything. But then she had some family, some health issues with her mother-in-law that she had to kind of bow out of the project. And so the second and third book, she started initially with me, talking about it, but then she ended up bowing out, and I wrote the second and the third book pretty much on my own. So that, that was, it was nice working with her on the first book, but, it was in some ways it was a little easier, working by myself on the second and third, because it was a little more challenging going back and forth and bringing, going back and forth for the story. And
I would imagine so, yeah. So y'all got the first book going, and like you said, when you were having those experiences, right? It's a good way to start a paranormal adventure. But Secrets in the Shallows, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
So Secrets in the Shallows is the first of the trilogy. And as I mentioned earlier, the story, we don't tell you who the killer is. You have to figure it out on your own. And we did something a little different on the first book. I call it writing from the inside out. So I actually, I like to incorporate thoughts, what people are thinking, and actually have that as part of the dialogue in the story. And then because of that, so, you have somebody thinking, you have a killer, right? And they're thinking one thing, but they're doing something else. So, but I don't tell you who they are. You have to figure it out. So you have to take
the book, right?
Right. Yeah. So you have to take clues on what they're doing, how they're acting, and things like that, in order to try to figure out who, that is, who that killer is, and in order to make it, work. By having the thoughts and the feelings and everything as part of it, and not just be a narration of a story. You actually are in that person's mindset. And it makes a difference when you've got a killer who is saying one thing, but they're thinking something totally different, and they might be doing something totally different. And so you can see the duplicity in the character because you actually know what they're thinking too, and so it makes a big difference when you're writing to be able to do that. And this story, actually, it does come from different perspectives. So you might have one chapter, and I always say, it's very easy to see whose perspective it's coming from, right? Even if it's the killer, and I don't say who the killer is, you still recognize that that's who this person is, And so if you might have, the couple of the main characters, John and Katie, you might have them be the primary character of the chapter. It'll be coming from their perspective, their thoughts, what they're doing, and that allows you to bring more into the story because you're not coming from one perspective; you're coming from multiple perspectives. So in the first book, you actually find out about several murders that are taking place in the story and have taken place in the past. So that is,
and I think, and I think that's the allure, a lot of that character development, because obviously, you did very well with the book. Heck, you even got the Paranormal Awards in 2014, right? And
yep. And then got the Reader's, Choice, the Excellence Award. And so, this has been, been really good as far as, the reception that we've received. The first book, you find out the what. So it's basically 3 parts to this story. You have the what. And then in the second one, you actually find out who the killer is in the second book. You do not find out for sure who the killer is because there's a plot twist at the end of Secrets in the Shallows, and then Devil in the Details brings out the who. And so you actually, and that one actually won also the New Apple Awards. They're no longer around, but it did win a New Apple Awards as well. So with regard to that story, you find out who it is, but then it's not exactly there's another twist. So there's a lot of, I like to do this suspense. I take a lot of cues from what Alfred Hitchcock and, Agatha Christie type of thing, but with a little bit of Stephen King mixed in, where it's more about the suspense and the mystery. There is a little bit of gore in there too, so you got murders, but it's more about the suspense, and you got the paranormal activity and stuff like that, rather than just focusing on, slasher kind of thing, Right. And so at the end of the second book, there's another twist. You find out who the killer is, but it's not exactly what you expect. So you have that. And then you finally have Method in the Madness, which is the last of the 3. And that is the why. So you find out the what, the who, and now you have the why. And in the third book, we actually have a continuation of the current story and them actually capturing the killer and going, coming on the trail of the killer, figuring out who that is. You finally know who this is, but you're alongside the investigation. And the spirits of the slain, I forgot to mention this, the spirits of the victims of the serial killer are actually haunting the investigators to help solve their own murders.
Oh, wow.
So all along, you have...
That is a good twist.
So you have those that are actually trying to give input to the investigators so that they will know who killed them, And one thing that, I mentioned that I got into the paranormal groups, we actually went on a bunch of, we actually became paranormal investigators for a while. And actually, I did do one episode of What Lies Beyond. And we did an actual investigation. We had a bunch of things happen there, but we had all this equipment for paranormal investigation. So I was familiar with, how do you, use this equipment? What is it used for? So I was able to incorporate that into the story as well.
Right what you know, right?
Right, exactly. So, it wasn't like we were just throwing stuff in there. We actually utilized some of the things that we were learning in real life and in the stories. So, with regard to that, in the last book, it not only continues with the current, investigation and trying to catch the killer, and you're seeing them coming on this person's trail, right? But it goes back and it switches, and there's sections of the book, and they're distinctly marked the time period and everything. But it actually goes back like 30 years, 30 years, right? No, 20 years, excuse me. It goes back 20 years and shows how the events started in the first place. What made this person a killer to begin with? And all the events. So all throughout the first two books, I've incorporated, what Easter eggs are, right? Most people know what Easter eggs are. So there are little things throughout the first two books that you don't realize are significant, or the significance of them. And then you see in the third book all these little things that appear in the past and what they mean, what the significance of them are, and they bring more to light into what took place, So it's a little more complex than just a simple murder mystery. There's a lot more thought into this, like I said.
And I love those deep. Yeah, and I love those deep psychological dives to provide that twist. Always been a fan,
Right. So it's a one way of incorporating that so that it makes the story a lot more deep, gives it more dimension, to it. And then it also is like this aha, I love those aha moments.
Absolutely.
Why that was that. Then even there's, I never have, I'm like I had told you before, I'd kind of gotten off, my daughter died, and it kind of got me thrown off for a while. And we had a lot of life changes, a couple moves, things like that. COVID hit. And so my intention was to basically do a prequel-sequel series. There's an item, and I won't say what the item is, but there's specific significance to this item. And you don't understand why it got where it is. I never bring it up in the story, but I got to the end of this, and I'm like, what am I going to do next? And I was like, well, I could say, where did this item come from? How did it get where it is? Why is it the way it is? And so there's that is still, I had actually written about 100,000 words of the first book that was part of the sequel series of this. And because of the life changes, I never finished it, but I'm still planning on working on it. So.
So is that the scoop for Cocktails with Cav, that we have another the pending sequel?
Yeah, it's actually probably going to be most likely a trilogy again. So just we'll see. I'll see. I'm debating on whether I want to make it a full trilogy or not. But that one, as I get a little bit closer to getting that one ready, I'll keep you up to date, and we'll talk about that as well at some point.
Well, please do. Well, I tell you what, Kimberly, that is between your stories in real life, which of course you got to incorporate in. This is an incredible trilogy, and definitely, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't had a chance to get to know Kimberly, give her a follow on X. Her screen name will be right there in the description of the show for you, as well as all our great links to this incredible trilogy. And by all means, like I said, we even got a scoop. We'll be highly anticipating that prequel sequel, that first book. You got to promise to come back, and all that stuff creeps me out. But that great story, and I tell you, great trilogy. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't gotten a chance to know Kimberly, please, by all means, give her a follow on X. Be looking out for her links, of course, to her great trilogy. And you're going to want to get a hold of these award-winning paranormal stories. Just fantastic. Kimberly, from New Orleans and North Carolina, Cheers, my friend. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.